Tilde. Many people have asked for it, so fine, I will do it. Let's talk about all of the internet online drama about Behring getting his channel terminated from YouTube. But I get a very distinct feeling that you're not going to like what I have to say, especially if you are a fan of Behring's. But let's actually look at what happened and examine some of the evidence, shall we? But before we go anywhere, I'm just going to quickly mirror here a short 2-minute video which was put up on Amazing Atheist's channel entitled Rough Day, an official message from Behring, channel suspension, #free Behring, since it will give us a reasonable base from which to build upon.
Hello, Behring speaking. TJ was nice enough to let me speak on his channel while mine's, out of order. So this morning, or maybe it was yesterday for you, I was sitting there working on a video and up pops his cunty looking message telling me that I'd just received 3 copyright takedown notices. 3 of the bastards, from one company. Now as you might be aware, on YouTube when you get a takedown notice it comes with a complimentary copyright strike, and if you get 3 of them, you're fucked. Goodbye channel. Needless to say, the very next thing that I did after swiftly shitting my pants was to go and have a look at my channel's standing, the thing that tells you how many strikes you've got, and I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that YouTube complied with the takedown notices and removed the videos in question, but they'd only given my account 1 copyright strike, which makes sense when you think about it. I mean, it shouldn't be possible for one entity to remove an entire channel and all the hard work that went into building it in one fell swoop. That's way too easy to abuse, and it's way too risky for creators. So anyway, I got up and had a break after having had the living fuck scared out of me, and when I sat back down, I noticed that I no longer had a fucking channel. Yep, it had been suspended for multiple third-party claims of copyright infringement. I'd gone from a perfectly clean slate, no copyright strikes and no community guideline strikes, to fuck off, we're deleting your channel in an instant. And the really baffling part was, and still is, I received an email when I got that initial strike, like you're supposed to. But there was no email about a second strike or a third strike. There wasn't even an email about my channel being suspended. There still hasn't been one. I've been writing to every email address at YouTube I can get my hands on, and fuck me dead, I can't get a single cunt to respond to me. It's fucking insane. So anyway, until I get this shit sorted out, assuming I can get it sorted out, I'll be posting updates and videos on my second channel, Patrick. There's a link in the description. I'd be very grateful for your subscription. And thanks again to TJ for allowing me this time on your channel to explain all the head fuckery that's been going down in one go. You're a stand-up bloke, mate. Cheers.
Okay, so that's all of that. And that's all well and good. But as always, I want more, and I'm going to push a little bit deeper. So of course, when this first happened, there was the immediate, "It was the SJWs, it was te feminists, YouTube is censoring us, the YouTube heroes have struck, the purge is beginning," and other such hyperbolic nonsense. All these claims made with no actual evidence to support it whatsoever. At the time, all that was known was someone had a copyright strike on their channel, which somehow morphed into 3, and their channel was terminated. Those were the facts. Anything more than that was just assumption, assertion, or conjecture. I completely understand people's passions running high. People seeing their favorite YouTube content creator who produces daily content suddenly vanish from the internet is going to be quite a shock. But to my mind, that doesn't excuse suddenly jumping to conclusions and making wild allegations without evidence. No matter how smarmy and condescendingly arrogant the YouTube internet feminist SJW brigade are being about Behring losing his channel. So after hearing all of this, I decided to wait a little bit and see what other information would come on out of the woodwork, something which you should always do before forming any particular opinion on an issue. And as it turns out, more information has come to light. Checking some of the video descriptions talking about this and perusing various comment sections and threads, it seems to have come out from somewhere that Behring's copyright flagging actually came from one company, Fresh TV. And heading on over to their YouTube channel, and we'll be talking about YouTube channels a little bit more later on, a 28-second long perusal of their featured video might give you an indication as to why. Fresh TV Incorporated is a Canadian production company specializing in youth entertainment, basically making cartoons. And a few years ago, they created a cartoon by the name of Total Drama Island, a 28-episode-long series which aired on Cartoon Network. And one of the semi-regular recurring characters in this cartoon was a bear. And this was a recurring character which dropped in and out of the various other Total Drama series that Fresh TV created. Now, I'm sure that over the past short while that you've been staring at this bear, you may have been struck with a vague sense of déjà vu. This is the bear from the Total Drama series. Comparing that then to the bear as used by the YouTuber Bearing, and as you can see, it's basically a clone. The only notable difference being that Bearing's bear features a few extra lines at the back of the head so that it could be used as a separate element in animation. Otherwise, it is a total duplicate. And at this point in time, I think it's also somewhat important to note that in the Total Drama franchise, this bear has a girlfriend, which is basically the same cartoon graphic with pink bows behind its ears. And I'm pretty sure there's a channel with that as an avatar floating around on YouTube as well. So, given what we now know about the people who have made the copyright claim and what their back catalogue of intellectual property is, I think you can probably put two and two together and work out why the copyright strikes have gone ahead, and also why they are completely justified. Duplicating someone else's artwork and using it as your own without their permission is something which is not going to be supported by any sort of fair use law. Fair use law, after all, covers things which are transformative in nature, which fall into the category of education, criticism, or parody. Bearing's use of this character falls into none of those categories, and his use of this copyrighted material is especially egregious, especially when you consider the fact that he has been selling his own merchandise with somebody else's copyrighted material on it for profit. This is the sort of action that can lead people into some very hot water court situations, and I wouldn't be surprised if something like that cropped up in the near future. This is another use of someone else's intellectual property without their permission that is completely justified in being copyright claimed and will in no way be covered by fair use. It's important to note here that there is nothing wrong with using other people's artwork for avatars or things like that when it comes to the internet. What matters is that you are either the original creator or you obtain permission from the artist to use their work. In this case, it would appear that neither of those things have happened, and so this is the result. It was not so much a case of if a copyright claim would be issued, but more of a case of when. Private property rights, including the rights to intellectual property, are very important in society. They are there to prevent people from stealing other people's content and ideas that were not created by them. It helps to protect consumers from being tricked into buying unofficial merchandise, or knockoff merchandise of inferior quality, for a couple of examples. And what I find particularly odd about this entire thing is that it is particularly clear that there has been a legitimate copyright infringement of intellectual property in this case. And yet we now have people basically saying that copyright law shouldn't matter, and that someone who has violated someone else's intellectual property should just be let off scot-free with absolutely no repercussions because reasons. To be completely clear here, I don't like the fact that Bearing has lost his channel over this. Anything that completely derails the livelihood of a content creator such as this is undoubtedly unfortunate. But in this case, it was something completely avoidable. And while I do certainly wish Bearing the best in getting swiftly back on his feet, I would hope that this is a harsh lesson learned. Do not use other people's content without their permission in a way that is not covered by fair use, because this is the inevitable result. And to those people saying that this is some sort of arbitrary claim as a way of destroying someone's life, or those saying that just because something is a few years old, that means it suddenly becomes public domain, these are not arguments. Your favorite YouTuber doesn't get some sort of exemption from the law just because you like them. Public domain law is a little bit tricky and varies from country to country. General rules are anywhere from about 50 to 70 years after the death of the creator, or 90 to 100 years after the date of publication. And this is completely reasonable to ensure that the person who actually created the original content has the rights to it over the course of their lifetime. This just to me seems to be another case of people not caring about a particular system until it affects them or someone they like. In other words, when a system that they have either supported or at least not actively spoken out against suddenly only becomes a problem when it doesn't benefit them. The fact that the last episode of Total Drama Island aired some years ago does not suddenly mean that all of the characters and contents therein are suddenly public domain. You've got a very good number of decades to wait before that becomes the case. And that, of course, assumes that the copyright is not renewed or transferred within that time. That particular graphic work for that character is still the property of Fresh TV, and you cannot change that. And while we're talking about Fresh TV and people's emotional reactions to this entire situation, I'd just like to point out one final thing. This is the Fresh TV who owns the rights to that character image. And yet, heading on over to another YouTube channel by the name of Fresh TV, which is coincidentally the one that you find when you search the term Fresh TV, a completely unrelated channel, and then looking at some of the comments that have been left on their most recent videos and their discussion page, they are being inundated with negative messages relating to a circumstance that they have absolutely nothing to do with. And I just want to point out here, this does not make you look good. This knee-jerk emotional response and venting your anger at the first person who looks kind of like they might have been involved. You wonder why there is this narrative going around that anti-feminist and anti-social justice people have god-awful audiences who just bully and abuse people online. This sort of shit is the reason why that narrative is able to exist. Now, I know that this is a very small minority of people who are doing this, and I'm glad to say that there are people who are at least taking the initiative and telling them, no, you got it wrong. These people are not related. But this is not a reaction that should have happened in the first place. People really need to cool their jets, take a step back, wait a little bit, get as much information as you can, and then act accordingly. Not just have some sort of emotional outburst at the nearest possible person. So that's pretty much all that I have to say on this particular topic. And while we're finishing up on the note of emotional outbursts, to all the Bearing fans who are mad at me because I've pointed out that Fresh TV actually have a completely legitimate legal position in regards to their copyright claim and protecting their intellectual property, you know where that downvote button is. Just go ahead and give that a click if it makes you feel any better. As for Bearing, whether he will or will not watch this, I hope that you've got a load of backups of all of your stuff and you're able to re-upload it all with a new image or something going on at the times when you're speaking, so that you can get yourself back onto your feet as swiftly as possible. There is a link to Bearing's second channel named Patrick in the box below this video, so if you'd like to stay on top of this as much as you can, that's probably the best place to go to for any future content from Bearing. So as a final wind down before I say ta-ra, this is all just information that I've gleaned from looking around on the internet. Maybe some of this information will change as events go ahead, maybe not. But I encourage people to just chill out. Bearing's a big boy, he can take care of himself, and if you do feel the need to take some sort of action, try and make sure that it's actually going to be something constructive, because doing anything otherwise just is not helpful.